Hello, good evening. Are we okay? Just a few technical issues with the good old sound. And thanks for joining in tonight. Are we all right on the sound? Give us a thumbs up, folks. If we're not, we'll sort it out. We'll get there. How's everyone's week? And thank you for joining GF Uncensored. It's been a difficult time sorting the equipment out tonight, so just bear with me. And we're there. We're ready to go. Well, what can I say about tonight? What fantastic guests we've got tonight. We've got the amazing Wayne Seaden. So I'd like to bring him in and bring him on, and we'll double check the sound. If the sound's okay, sound is sound. Thanks, Phil. That's great. That's my cameraman. And good evening to you, Wayne. Hello.
Good evening.
Thank you. Are you okay with the sound there now?
Yeah, it sounds a lot better than it was.
Okay, that's all. I just have to put the extension in and out again. So how's things been going? How are you getting on? What you're up to? Tell us more about yourself.
What am I not up to? It seems to be all hands on deck at the moment for me. I'm working with various events teams, going to different places, helping them out with their investigations. We've now restarted filming our little online series of Truth Beyond Paranormal, which I present, and I'm now sort of 3/4 of the way through my fourth ghost story, my fourth book. She's getting close to completion. So at the moment it's very busy, as obviously as a result of releasing my first 3 books. We've got a production company has approached me and asked if they would like to, if I would like to give them the access to turn my books into films, to go onto Amazon or better. So it's quite a bit of it's been quite a shocking year, really, to be honest.
But as again, that's an amazing unfold of the last 14, 15 months, isn't it, Wayne, as well? And
yeah,
to take things into reality is from paper to reality. That's a nice touch as well. So again, we'll touch on that as we're moving forward. But certainly, it's like a win-win then, really, isn't it? The last 14 months for that scenario.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, before. Or just as COVID was starting, I was a co-director with my parents of a coach company, and I'd always been writing books on and off, and small ghost stories when I was working alongside Most Haunted, and in between their series, I was filling in the gaps with small ghost stories. And my parents had always said, you know, when you're out in the coach, take a laptop with you and write one of your ghost stories out on your laptop. You've got plenty of time to do it when you're sitting around for a few hours. And they decided March last year they wanted to retire, and so the coach company came to an end. And I was looking at, you know, well, I wanted to keep the coach company going. My father started it back in 1987.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep it going for him. But problem is, with the times being like they were, and COVID, you know, rearing its head up and saying, well, you know, nobody wants a coach to go out anywhere because you can't go anywhere. So we agreed to close it down. And I then started to actually publish my books through Amazon. It was very difficult to actually find an agent, a publisher that will take you on without an agent. So I decided to go down the Amazon route and self-publish. My first book was a bit touch and go because of a difference between the English written language and the American written language. But in general, it didn't go down too bad. And, you know, a few copies went out, and there was some really wonderful reviews went in its place. And now I'm on to book 4, which should be released within the next 2 weeks. So as soon as I finish doing that, it's on to script writing. So
it certainly
has
tying in.
It has been a complete change of events.
And don't get me wrong, but put me right on this. You're based down Essex way, or I
Yes.
have seen our Phil's on here, and Phil is Are you an Evertonian?
I am.
Right, okay. I'm just trying to work my head around, see where you're based. And our Phil's a head steward at Everton there. That's on in the comments. So he does the Park End, so he'll feel at home now as well. So was that down from how did that come about?
My father's from Birkenhead.
Right, okay. Which is
my dad's from Birkenhead, and he always supported Everton.
Yeah.
So of course it stood to reason, pass it down from father to son. So I then started supporting Everton as well, and it just sort of stayed that way.
Yeah, good evening, folks, and thanks for everyone tuning in as well. And I'm only in Ellesmere Port, so I'm about 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away from Birkenhead. So it's a nice part of the world is Birkenhead.
Yeah. We did go through there. We paid a visit. I think it was a good few years back. I think Everton were playing Stoke at home, and we decided to make a weekend of it. And we actually went past his old house and went into town, and we actually obviously stayed to watch the game while the girls went shopping. So that was a nice little experience, because it had been the first time I'd actually been up to Liverpool. So I was able to actually see the ground. And oddly enough, I think it's 2 years ago, I took a group of Norwich City Football Club's youth squads up to Liverpool, and they wanted to have a look through. They'd been booked into a guided tour around Anfield. And I pulled up outside, and they got off, and I said to the guy on the gate, I said, well, can I park my coach in the car park? And they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. And I said, but I'm bringing in a guided tour. Your car park's empty. And the guy's like, no, he says, you can't do that. So we'll have to go. I'll park round in the park. So I've pulled away from Anfield, gone round the corner, and in the distance you could see Goodison Park. I'm like, right, that's it. I'm finding a place to go, and I'm stopping there. I never believed my dad when he said you could throw a stone from one ground and hit the other.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent my afternoon at Goodison Park instead.
Well, for all your misdemeanors, I'll put that down as each to his own, as we say with that. And our Phil's made up there in the comments box. But we'll get back onto the paranormal side. What got you into all that, and how did you end up in Essex from there? Anyway, how did it's just so many questions I've got to ask.
Right. Well, I first got into the paranormal shortly after my granddad was killed. My granddad was killed in 1980 in a shipyard accident down here in Wivenhoe and Colchester. And for about 6 months, I would swear blind that my granddad was coming into my room at night time, and all I could see was his silhouette. And I knew it was him. Yeah. Something that told me it was definitely him. He was quite tall, thin. He had big ears, and I called them the FA Cup ears. And he had a big nose. Yeah. And that silhouette to me confirmed it was him. And I was very close to my granddad. He taught me how to read before I even started school. So there was a very strong bond between me and my granddad. And for ages, I would say to my mum, my granddad's visiting. He's coming in and seeing me to make sure I'm all right. And my mum was like, no, it's just your imagination. You think you see him because you miss him so much.
Yeah.
And when I think back at what my mum said, and obviously being in the paranormal field, you look at it and you say to yourself, well, okay, this is how you debunk things. Has the human mind missed that person so much that my mind had generated an image of him in the dark, where my brain has filled in the blanks of what my eyes can't see? But then it turned out that I was having a conversation with him as well. And it was a full-blown conversation.
Did you find you was zoning out with that, Phil? Like the presence of, when you know that you know. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
So when you're in your room and in your environment, that link and the connection's there. So your mindset is, that's how strong it is as well. So it just flows, doesn't it? Did you find yourself with the conversation and the communication of you zoning out and linking in stronger, or how did that work?
It was almost as if he'd never gone.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, you know, he'd just come round to me. You'll have to excuse my son in the living room. He's having a bit of a moment.
A good pair of lungs, nothing wrong with that.
Oh, sorry, my fiance's just coming to sort him out. You know, I was having a full-blown conversation with him. My mum sat outside my bedroom one night and actually wrote down the conversation. And she had been that worried about it that I had to go to a child psychologist, much to my disgust. And when she actually showed them this paperwork of the conversations I was having, the child psychologist said, normally if it was an imaginary friend, it would be a bunch of random questions. And each question would not be related because the conversation would go so fast that it would be a question and answer, and then the next question would be totally unrelated to the previous one. Said, but this whole conversation is going on and it's all related to the very first question that was asked. So in his eyes, his granddad is definitely there, and my mum couldn't believe it. And when we sort of looked through it all and sort of looked back at it, and we were like, well, maybe it was him.
But don't you find as well, going back to an earlier age as well, where we mentioned imaginary friends as well, where other people might not totally understand, but when you're receiving and you're communicating and you're giving information to each other, that seems outside the norm for people that don't understand or don't understand that type of, you know, the mediumship that you were displaying. Then, you know, it's labelled, I find.
Yeah, I don't like the term imaginary friends, because I look at how the imaginary friend comes about, and you know, 9 times out of 10, it's always going to be children that have an imaginary friend. But in the field, we know that children are more open-minded than adults. When you get into adulthood, your mind closes off a little bit more or completely. Children's aren't like that. And so are they actually talking to an imaginary friend, or are they talking to a spirit? And this is obviously where my situation was. The fact that I was that close to my granddad, yes, I did miss him, because I'd only seen him the day before, and then I was never going to see him again.
Yeah.
So everybody was saying, oh, yeah, you just missed him, so your brain was telling you he was there. But then after my mum had written down the conversation, she was like, no, this conversation says he was there with you. And I've had incidences since where technically I should have died and I haven't. And my mum has always backed me up and said, no, your granddad's watching over you. And it's sort of, it's a bit worrying to think that he's still watching me over me. You know, I'd have liked to have thought he was with my nan and sort of carried on in the afterlife.
In a nice way as well with that, Wayne. It's like there's no time conception up there, as I always find.
No.
You know, like, so if Nan's passed earlier and it's 10-year difference, there's no time conception, you know. So when one relative goes, and then the understanding, but trying to relay that to where you said you still feel he's around you. So Nan would obviously still be around you as well. And the combined energy of both of them, to me, brings a greater impact. And when I've always worked, I've always found an etiquette within the spirit world where the older generation say, excuse me, we've been waiting longer, so we're going to have our say first. And I always find the older generation come through first when you start communicating as well. So it's a good understanding as well. Sometimes that's just how it works for me. Yeah,
and it was always sort of like quite a bizarre feeling when anybody would actually talk about it. You know, I would go on the defensive, and I'd be like, look, you know, if my granddad comes and visits me, that's fine. And they'd be like, but he's been dead for so many months or so many years. And I'm like, And I had to learn pretty quickly to block out any criticism from other people regards to what I felt about my grandfather.
Did you find yourself shutting up shop a little bit there, where you were trying to openly talk about it? Did you find spiritually that you had to hold back a little bit as well? I always find that very frustrating, where, you know, when we go to house clearances and we talk about what's going on around people's experiencing within the house, and the youngster is saying that they're seeing things as well, I find that they start holding back, and then that becomes more pressure and more frustrations. Did you go through a stage like that as well?
I learned very quickly to remain tight-lipped. To start off with, I was telling people that I was seeing my granddad, and it was the typical, do you actually come forward and say you've seen a UFO and run the risk of being ridiculed? It was that situation. And so I learned quickly to keep my mouth shut, and I just kept it all to myself. And for a long time, it stayed that way. And then eventually, once I started sort of researching more into the paranormal, I thought to myself, why am I keeping my mouth shut? At the end of the day, now we're in an age where, you know, it's okay to be different. Yeah. It's okay to think in a different way. It's, you know, it's now the normal to be different. And so, of course, I just said, well, you know what? I don't care what anybody else says. I spent most of my life being on my own anyway. Yeah. You know, I had a very, very small circle of friends. And I never really talked much about it to them. I just kept it all to myself until I felt I was ready.
At what age did you feel that was like, right, enough? So I've kept quiet for long enough. Were you seeing other spirit energies? Was you picking up on other things, or was it just collectively within the house?
Normally, I've never actually seen spirit energies. I've always felt them. My granddad was the only person that I've actually physically seen, as far as I can recall. My granddad has been the only one I've physically seen. Normally, I just get the presence, the feeling that something's there. And if I'm just left, if no one talks to me, I can actually pick up on people or something that's going on in that immediate area. And as an example, I was at Rougham Control Tower on Saturday, and I absolutely love that place. And we were up there in October filming for Truth Beyond Paranormal, and while we were in the back room, we were doing dowsing rods. And my partner Ellen had said on the way up there that she felt that there was someone with the name of J, or the letter J, would come through. And while we were in there doing the dowsing rods, they started going crazy. We would just ask a simple question and a yes or no to cross over or open up answer. And by the time we'd finished, we'd got a navigator by the name of Jack. And the compass that was in his plane was in a display case in that room. And we're like, okay, time had run out for that room and we had to move to another one. And as we walked in, my partner and her friend stayed behind, and they went into the room next door. And there on the wall was a picture of a B-17 crew. And in the bottom right-hand corner was a navigator by the name of Jack Fryer. And when I was there again on Saturday, I was talking to the owner of the place, and he turned around to me and said he had a medium email him the other day and said that he got someone by the name of Jack come through while he was visiting there during the day. And of course, as soon as I mentioned it to him, he's like, I'm going to have to get his details and I'll have to contact him and tell him what you've just told me. Yeah. And so I get the feeling, and Saturday night we had a situation with one of the guests where he stood in a corner that no one really wanted to stand in, and he started shaking and he could feel his hands getting hot. And I said, we've got 6 airmen in this room. There's 6 of them. There's 12 of us in total, but there's 6 airmen in this room, and they are letting you feel what they felt. Yeah. And he said, my hand is blistering, it's bubbling. And something compelled me to go over there and place my hand over his hand and ask the spirit to take whatever it was they were doing to him off of him.
Yeah.
And within seconds, his hand had cooled down. He was fine, but he was really, really sweaty and horrible. So I said to him, right, you go outside. You're going to need to leave the control room, get out of the atmosphere and stand outside for a couple of minutes. And then when you feel better, come back in. And as soon as he came back in, he was fine.
And you find that as well, where you ask your team to do something and you get a response like that, and it certainly helps, doesn't it? You know, it's,
yeah.
I always find it's a win-win, and I always find that on an investigation, people, if they stay calm and collectively understand what's going on in and around them, sometimes you need that time out from that zone of what you've just experienced as well. Have you ever had any other experience in where it's really been overwhelming or anything like that, where you've had somebody totally thrown off the feet, not thrown off the feet physically, but really, you know, like you could have a 6-foot chap who's never been experienced anything like that? Have you ever had a team member or any public members that's really been had a bit of a swipe?
I had a situation about 8 years ago at Harwich Redoubt Fort in Essex. It's a Napoleonic fort, and during World War II there was a block of 3 prison cells that was used to hold down German pilots before they were taken to the BOW camps. And me and another investigator, Claire, we was sitting in one of these cells, and they'd done the cells up as if they were in the time. So there was a table with an old metal bowl and a mug, a knife and fork, a Bible, and the bed with the old itchy blankets on. And standing in the corner was an old mannequin dummy, and it was dressed up in full German pilot's outfit. And we'd set up a trigger object on the bed, and it was one of those motion sensor ones with like a boxing ring with a red light in each corner. And you set the alarm, and that was flashing away. And the other investigator that was with me was sitting in the opposite corner of the room. So she was about 20 feet away from this dummy, and I was standing in the doorway of the cell about 12 foot away from it. And she said to me, she goes, do you know what? Every time those red lights are flashing, that mannequin is moving. Bearing in mind, this mannequin is propped up against the wall at an angle. It's like that.
Yeah.
And I'm standing, I'm looking at it, and every time the lights flashed, I'm like, no, it's not moving. I said, that isn't moving. I said, but something is going to happen, because I can feel it in the atmosphere. And no sooner, as soon as I said that, this mannequin dummy just went straight at me. I went, oh my God, and I've grabbed it. The head's fallen off. I've played football with it. I've grabbed it with my foot. I've stopped it from rolling off. And poor Claire, the other investigator, she just jumped up, she'd screamed, she ran out, she went, oh, I'm not here for this, in a polite way. I've not come here for this. And I'm like, would someone like to help me, please? I'm holding this dummy in my hands, and this head's rolling across the floor. Well, luckily there was three other team members in the cell next door, and they were filming dowsing rods at the time. And on their film footage, you hear them say, if there's anybody here, can you please cross the rods for a yes? And as the rods crossed over, you hear Claire scream in the next cell, and boom, she was gone.
And so, again, it's good when you get an energy in one room, and then it's other people are picking up on it as well, with the strength in another room as well. I love all that. And that's why I always say to people in groups, take a pad so you can write things down as well. And then even if you're tiring at the end of the night, or to put the time down that something happened that you was unsure about as well. So the simplistic things for me are amazing, but I've never known anyone go on a ghost investigation and decapitate a mannequin.
It was horrible, because although I was laughing, I was, to be frank, I was pooping myself.
But this is what people pay good money for as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the evidence that everyone's after. And
it was seen by another person.
Yeah.
That is, for me, that is the ultimate goal, because the fact is that something has happened. If it happens to yourself, it's your word against everybody else's.
Yeah.
But if it happens and it's witnessed by somebody else at the same time, then that is a whole new ball game.
Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to shoot back up to a couple of questions that's come in. So please ask more questions, folks, as well. And the lovely Phil said, who's my cameraman as well, when we get out and about with on the Invest. Phil said, when you come up to Liverpool next, can you give him a shout, and then can you take the voodoo off Goodison for us, please? That's what he said. So there was quite a similar thing with Birmingham City, where they had a local witch in, or a local Wiccan person in, or a medium, to bring some black cats and try and change all their misfortune. So Phil, you live in hope. So see what Wayne can do next time he's up in the northwest. So keep firing away with your questions. That's great. David West says he's been to Roughton Airfield as well with Barry Guy. Very atmospheric energies there as well. Very high energy place as well. There
is still Second World War aircraft buried in the fields. Later on this year, after the harvest, they are actually going to be excavating a bomber that crash landed there. It's 20 foot down in a field of rye at the moment. So they've got to wait for the harvest, and then they're going to be digging that up as well.
As you was touching on the Second World War and all that, I was away at the weekend just for a little rest, and a person described that somebody was watching them all the time, and I knew it was linked with the war, and it was actually Rudolf Hess. So he actually came through and communicated with me on Saturday night. And obviously, I just felt that type of energy just needed to be crossed over. But a lot of people don't understand how many people came over to the UK in the Second World War that was captured and interrogated. And the frustration I felt with that energy, I was just tapping my foot for a good 2 or 3 minutes with the frustration being built, because he didn't want that interrogation, obviously. But when you get something like that as well, and, you know, this is a relaxing weekend, you know, and you're picking up stuff like that, and it's like the Second World War at the moment, I know we've just gone through D-Day, but everything seems to be heightened at the moment around the Second World War as well.
Yeah. The problem is I've got a really bad infatuation with World War II. And that is courtesy of my previous life. I do believe in reincarnation. Back in 2000, I moved into my sister's house. She'd moved off to Corfu, and I rented her house off her. But things were happening in the house that I couldn't understand. I had a sneaky suspicion that something was present in the house, but I couldn't quite sort of get any further information from it. And I contacted a medium who lived locally. She never charged for her services, which obviously any decent medium doesn't really charge that much, or if anything.
Yeah.
And I agreed to pay her bus fare. And she basically met me in a neutral place. She walked up to the back of the house, walked in through the back door, and within seconds, she said, "Joanne." And I went, "Who's Joanne?" And she went, "Your wife." I went, "But I'm not married." And after about an hour of sitting with her, it turned out that I was her dead husband. And I died in the evacuation of Dunkirk in 1st of June 1940, I think it was. And she died a year later. And her spirit comes and goes between that house and the house 2 doors down. And after all the information, I'd written it all down. I went to the Hall of Records in Chelmsford, which is our county hall, and I checked. And there it was, my address, all the people, right the way back to the Victorian times. And there on there was Michael and Joanne Bloomfield. And that he'd died in 1940 and she died a year later. And I'm just like, I can't believe this. But as a result, I've moved twice since, and Joanne has come with me each time. And I think it's her that helps me get the senses that I get when I go into places now. And it's just so bizarre because obviously a lot of the stories that I have got planned to write are all based on World War II.
And to me, that's like a phenomenon as well, where it's just like the unexplained is unexplained, but it's unexplained, but you've got the documentation as well. So it's like the time period and logging it all together and putting the pieces together. And I mentioned it the other night, we are more like spiritual detectives as well, aren't we? Trying to tie all the little pieces in and uncovering all these little chapters and knowledge and trying to make some sense of it as well. And I'm a big believer in anybody that's picking up sensitivity wise is just give what you're given. The amount of people that come to you or email you a week later, or, well, I had this and I had that and I had this and I didn't say that. And you're just like, you need to throw everything out there to, you know, it's not the perspective of putting that mindset in if you're trying to give somebody the information to throw them off or give them too much information around the character. But just, there's no right or wrong ways with receiving from spirit. And I always say as a medium, it's like, just give what you're given. If it's wrong and nobody can take it, the next group that go there might be able to tie that in. You say, oh, you know, so again, having a bit of a log and an understanding of history that people are recording stuff and the data, I always find it's good to, as yourself, when you get invited places, it's always nice to go to places you haven't been and then tie in with what's come out in the past as well, which is always good.
Yeah, and I had that with Rougham. I mean, I'm only an hour down, well, 45 minutes down the road from Rougham Airfield. And it was always on my bucket list. I'm like, I must go there. And now within the space of 6 months, I've been there twice.
Yeah. Well, the likes of D-Day and all that as well, when I was touching on that, that ties in with this conversation of what we've just gone. I think it was the 6th or the 7th of June. That ties in with why I've been keep seeing the beach. It just makes sense now. You know, so there might be a little bit more for possibly from your past life that pops in. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it's a bonus. But as well, I mean, we've seen things over the year as well, Wayne, where, you know, we have children that come through and they've said, oh, you know, I lived in that city, there's my grave and all that. And it's just unbelievable to me. That's like incomprehensible, where a young child can say, oh, I lived before and there's my grave. You know, it's just, and that's why I think the paranormal world is the biggest unknown field with everything, because on a certain topic, subject, or anything happening, we have to really look for them answers to tie everything in to go, fantastic, that makes sense. And I always find that we're trying to make too much sense of it sometimes, and then it's nice to sit back. Have you ever had anything with the deja vu where, like you say, you was always called there and it was on your bucket list? Have you had places where you think, oh, I've been here before and I've walked past there and I know this, your gut instinct kicks in, and it does blow my mind. And I say it all the time, but this industry just blows my mind away with the intelligence of spirits.
Again, I don't think it's necessarily so much deja vu. I think that is probably down to a previous life. My mum and dad used to do the Sun £9.50 caravan holidays. And one year I humoured them and went with them. And we went up to Lindisfarne Island. Yeah. There's a caravan park just down the road from there. And I'd never been to that part of the UK before. And months before, I had a dream and it was a reoccurring dream. It kept happening like every other night for about 2 or 3 weeks. And we were driving down a road, and there was houses down one side and woodland on the other.
Yeah.
And as we're driving down this little hill, in my dream, a child covered in blood comes running out of the woods across the front of the car towards the housing estate, followed by a man with a knife in his hand. And as we're actually going up to Lindisfarne Island, we're going down this road and it's heading downhill, houses on the right, trees on the left. And then all of a sudden, this fox covered in blood comes running out of the woods in front of us. I just close my eyes. I'm like, no, that's it. I'm not having this. And I closed my eyes because I was expecting something to come out after the fox.
Yeah.
My mum screamed crazy. And my dad's like, slams the foot on the brakes. He's like, hold on, kids. And we're like, whoa, what's going on? And there's me. I've just got my head in my hands. So to actually get that reoccurring dream happen over a period of time, and then to actually go somewhere that you've never been to before, and you're going down the road and thinking, hang on a minute, I recognize those houses, I recognize this dip, the surroundings are there, something's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, bam, it hits you. And it is a bit scary to experience it, but I've never had full interaction with it, if that makes any sense. I've never been able to change or alter the dream. When I've had the dream, it progresses a little bit each time I have it, and then it stops. And I know that when it stops, I know that within 6 months of it stopping, it's going to happen in one way or another.
Yeah, and I always find the way I work in and around with the spiritual thing, where you say 6 months, I ask my team not to give me too much and overpower me in that way, and just give me a week or two ahead, so you know what's coming gut instantly wise, but it's not to over bombard you, because our minds are only computers and we can only deal with so much. And I find that spirits will show you so much that you can deal with. So where you're saying with the 6 months, I was like that at a period, but if you want to shrink that down, just ask your team to show you little snippets within a week or two or a month or two. So you know what's coming, but it's not too overpowering. And I always find that spirits will show you what you can deal with. So obviously you can deal with a lot, cope with a lot, understand what's going on. And you are waiting for them things to tie in spiritually as well, aren't you?
Yeah. It's a weird feeling. You know, I've had a few situations where I've had these reoccurring dreams, and they've come not as exactly as the dream has gone, but pretty much as close to it. You know, to dream that you've been sent to your room to tidy up your bedroom because it's a mess, and you go outside onto the landing to put the laundry in the basket, and the loft hatch is open, and when I look up, I see a pair of red eyes watching me from inside the loft. And as that dream progressed, it got to a stage where I was being forced to go into that loft, and whatever it was standing there.
Face your fears.
The last time I had the dream, for some unknown reason, there was a helicopter winch hanging out the loft hatch, and I could hear this helicopter. And I'm like, oh, it's a helicopter winch. I'm going in this. So I've actually got into the strap. And as I've gone up, I've seen the red eyes. So I've jumped down again. I've hit the floor. And then all of a sudden, this big black silhouette has jumped out of the loft. Still all pure black, just these two bright red eyes. And it's pointed at me and it said, I will get you. And then it's run across the landing and disappeared. Months down the line, my mum's told me I've got to go and clean up my room. I've gone in there, started tidying up, got the dirty laundry, gone to put it in the wash basket, and the loft hatch has opened and it's hit me on the head and knocked me to the floor. I was sitting there absolutely packing it. And I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with this. When I opened my eyes, my sister was standing there pointing at me going, I gotcha. She hadn't shut the loft hatch properly. Now, I dreamt that was coming, and I did nothing about it because I was totally unaware of when it was going to happen.
Yeah. And again, where you're saying about you seeing these things unfolding before they happened, I went through an experience where, you know, when I was in the factory years ago, I worked with like 5,500 people. And I went through a stage for about 2 years where I was talking to somebody, but time froze.
Yeah.
And it was like a millisecond, and then within a week or two, they were gone. So it was like they were preparing for their soul to go or whatever. That it was just like sliding doors. It was just like magnetic poles clashing, and it was just like, I'm here, but I won't be here. And to experience that, you know, I mean, one was a coordinator, and one was just a very good friend of mine who really passed really early in a car accident. And it's like a pre-warning sign, but they don't say what it's about. They give you this scenario, and it's like, it can really bombard you. And as you say, it can play a lot on your mind as well.
Yeah, it's like they're beating around the bush. They don't want to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but they're sort of trying to prepare you for something that's going to happen to try and make you a little bit more, I'm going to put it, alert.
Yeah.
They're trying to make you more alert of the situation, but they're not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
And also as well, we get them signs where it's like, spirits are like, you're not taking notice. You're not taking notice. We're screaming at you. You're not taking notice, and they put a bigger spanner in the works as well sometimes with that, and they really slow you down and really slow you down. So as from Colchester, and you're moving forward from this airfield that you went to and all that, and how did you progress from there? I have been to Colchester once. I think it was in 1985, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I couldn't get out of the place for that many roundabouts.
You don't want to come back down here now, then. We've got even more roundabouts now.
Right. And I also remember that was the days before sat-nav, and it was the old AA route planner. And I even have to ask a traffic warden, where am I? I was just back in the same spot, just seemed to be a re-loop of the same spot. So I found that quite interesting in Colchester. I think I was going down to Harwich, and I was getting the ferry over to Sweden. So that was interesting, trying to navigate me energies just not right. I don't feel in and around them, because usually you north, south, east, west, you've got a good incline, haven't you? But I don't know whether do you find, how's the lie of the land down there? Do you feel, is it like Stonehenge would be, people say it's Titan for them? Have you got any local places that's a bit off the scale with their energies around there?
There are a lot of places in and around Colchester that have got a lot of energy. Mainly in the town centre, Colchester Castle. I mean, obviously, Colchester is Britain's oldest recorded town, and Britain's first city. And you've got Colchester Castle itself, which is Europe's most complete Norman keep in it. Yeah. And that place has got so much energy in it. Every time I've been in there on an investigation, something has always happened. Whether it be things have been moved, people have done different experiments and something's happened, and I've gone, well, actually, what that spirit box has just come out with is correct. I've moved the board so you couldn't see what it says, but during Victorian England, this was a soup kitchen for the hungry and homeless, and I had to move the sign before the guests came in so they wouldn't see that, and yet it came through on the box. So,
but that simple things of that going on, that explains what happened to me there in 85 with that type of energy, because it's like when you go into a Roman like Chester, or you go into York, you know the ancestry of them energies, it's really thriving as well. So that makes sense for me, that as well. So again, I am really drawn down to the south. I am really drawn down to that neck of the woods as well. And I've had quite a few people trying to contact me and like come down to Essex and go down to the fort there. Is it Roebuck? And have you've done any locations around there? Could you say to the folks that's tuning in any good investigations to try down there?
Harwich Redoubt Fort is an amazing place, and that's not that far from the port where you catch the ferries. And it's tucked up out the way. You can drive past the entrance and not even know it's there. I mean, the fort itself was built in 1810, and again, there is so much energy in there. It would be very hard not to investigate there and not have something happen.
And that Was that former prisoner or holding cell, if I remember rightly?
That was where I had the mannequin dummy thrown at me in the holding cells that they had there. The fort itself is literally like a large concrete donut has been built in a crater. And that's the only way I could describe it. It's a big ring fort. And the only way you can actually get into the fort is by what would be classed as a drawbridge, concrete drawbridge, that goes from the main ground over a dry moat and to the roof of the fort. And then you have to go down the stairs to get into the courtyard. But it's had so many uses since it was built, obviously to defend the East Coast from the Napoleonic forces, right the way through to World War II, where it would hold prisoners before they were taken off to the POW camps. And now it's a working museum. So there is lots of energy in there. And that at the moment is going to still be my most favourite place to go. Also, and it's quite cheap as well.
Yeah, I have seen it. And for one reason or another, it didn't come around and about that I couldn't get there. Just touching back on Steve Daly, who's a good friend of mine up from Ayrshire way. He said around about the Lindens Far and all that as well. Is it Haggerston by any chance? He was asking earlier on.
Oh, to be honest, I couldn't tell you exactly the name of the place. All I can remember is it was one of those caravan parks on the coast there. That I was quite young at that time.
Okay. Obviously, if any of our historians out there, I'm sure they'll tie in with that as well. And I went up to Dean Castle with Steve many years ago, and I'd say that was one of my favourite places for seeing stuff that Scotland aren't allowed to know, that these memorabilia stuff are in there. If you ever come across anything that's really mind-blowing where you think, I didn't know that was related to this building, or the links and the connections, like where you're saying that the World War II stuff's buried underground. And I've read in Norwich or Harwich Way or somewhere like that they virtually dug a World War II tank up off the marsh fields and stuff like that. I love all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's being shown light of day again, and like the Mary Rose and all that. Have you ever been to somewhere and gone, I didn't know that had the links and the connections with, you thought it was like totally something different spiritually as well, and things have really opened your eyes?
I would actually say yes. With Colchester Castle, we had things come through where we're sort of like, right, okay, we will write this down. And it wasn't until after that we've looked through the books and we've asked people like the caretaker of the castle the following day and said to him, can you sort of clarify any of these facts? And he's gone, well, actually, yes, there is this and there's that. And we're like, right, we'll tick that off. We'll tick this off. One particular instance downstairs underneath the castle, excuse me, we had our guests were in, it's sort of 6 individual rooms, and they're all linked with low roofed tunnels that connect each one. And in one of the furthest ones away, there's a series of tombstones, and then there's a little, I can only describe as a passageway, and it just stops. And while we were in one of the other rooms, there was a man standing, one of the guests was standing at the entrance to this, the entrance into the room with the tombs in. And a lady had said to me, sure, I've got a cold spot. So I've gone running over to where she is. I've put the temperature gun around her feet and around her body. There was no significant drop or increase in temperature. And as I turned to look at this guy, I could see a pair of sandaled legs standing in front of him in the tunnel entrance. And I called out to this guy, and I said to him, Trevor, I said, is there anybody there with you? And he went, no, I'm here on my own. I said, no, someone is with you. They're standing right in front of you. And as I said it, these legs walked into this section where the tombstones were. And me and this man, we'd followed these legs round the corner into this passageway. And then it just stopped at where this wall was. And we're like, if that is you, can you make that light? There was a green light appeared on the wall. And I said, if that's you, can you make that light a little bit bigger? And it grew in size. I said, thank you. Can you make it smaller now, please? And it went smaller. And the guy turned around to me and he said, I reckon it could be from the security boxes. Because in the rooms, there was these little boxes with a green light on it. And I said to him, it can't be, because those lights are flashing, whereas this one's a solid light.
Yeah.
And we asked out if there was something significant to do with this specific part of passageway. And we asked it to move to the left for a yes and to the right for a no. And it literally shot off to the left. Just as we were getting an intelligent conversation, the caretaker slammed all the lights on and went, right, your time's up. It's time to go. And I thought, and it was something significant with that passageway. And when we were leaving, I said to the caretaker, I said, there's a passage down there. And now I've lived in Colchester for 46 years. I never knew there was a passage underneath Colchester Castle.
Yeah.
And he just turned around and he went, behind that wall? I said, yeah. I said, and it comes out in the lower castle park, doesn't it? And he went, yeah. He said, that's not that well known. I said, well, we've walked into the passageway and we've got this blocked off wall. I said, but that's a passageway, isn't it? And he said, yeah. He said that was blocked off about 20 or 30 years ago.
Wow.
I hadn't got a clue it was there. And I'm like, oh my God, that's weird.
A few more questions coming in. Lovely Vivian Powell says, have you ever done RAF Ridgewell?
No. I've only done RAF Upward in near Huntingdon, which unfortunately now is being bulldozed as we speak, and being turned into a housing estate, unfortunately. And that was the first ever episode that we recorded for Truth Beyond Paranormal was there. Yeah. And again, very active place. And RAF Bury St Edmunds, which is Rough and Control Tower. They're the only RAF bases I've done so far. So there's a lot more that I'd want to do.
Okay. And I know we're in 50 odd minutes coming in already. And could you tell people where they can get hold of your books? I know it's on Amazon. And can you tell us the titles of the books that they can look for? And we'll get you a few more sales going in as well.
A preemptive strike. I took some out of my box. Because I also sell the books personally. Yeah. Amazon give me the right to order as many books as I want, and then I can sell them personally, which I do. I sign them as well. So the first one I wrote was A Whistle from the Hills. Yeah. Which is based on the Battle of Crete during World War II. The second one was Lady J. Yeah. About a group of guys that take an unexpected stay over at an abandoned house with rather gruesome results. And the last one is Cricket, which is based on a family that go on holiday with their ill son, and strange things happen and their son ends up being quite well again. What's the title of the fourth one? Is it Job Done? Or yes, the fourth one is called Job Done. That one is about a guy that he helps fix up a house with rather strange results. I won't go too much into that because otherwise I might ruin the book. Don't tell us the ending. But I also have a fifth and sixth book ready to write. One called I'm Not Alone, again based on sort of modern day with flashbacks to World War II. Yeah. And then the last one is, again, it's going to be a World War II one, and it's called The Good Penny. Oh, right. I think we'll have to get you down to where we go on a special invitation. I'm sure Karen will sort that out for us as well. She might have mentioned it to you in the past, but we'll try and get you down there because there's a lot of archives around there and memorabilia there as well in this secret RAF place that we get down to. Excuse me. That wasn't me, that. Excuse me. Stand back. Sorry. Coming really strong then. So tell us your time with in and around the Most Haunted and
you was doing, was it the Most Haunted Lives as well, and the setup around there? Because I think I used to watch that at the early days, and my jaw used to drop, you know, with watching the likes of the paranormal back then, and it was like,
Yeah.
there's more to this than meets the eye. I've got to know about this. I've got to know about that. And I found them from that day, it was like somebody just turning a big cog in me back, tightening it up, and then just letting it go into the paranormal world and field.
Yeah, I was like a lot of people that sort of watched it and thought, wow, this is amazing. And then after a number of years, you know, it sort of, you then start to see the cracks. Things don't seem right. They seem a bit too unbelievable.
Well, I think everything runs its course, and don't get me wrong, for a series to be in and around that popular for that amount of time, you know, your little old grandma that's there watching it on when it used to be a Saturday night or a Friday evening at the time, or back in the day, or Sunday night, it was like they were fixated, weren't they? So they you know, it's got the backbone of the public from day one, hasn't it? You know, and you know, obviously I've worked with, I've met a lot of people that's worked on the show and that as well, and I've had some good times, and the understanding of how it relates to the period that they were on it in the time as well. So what would you say the series in and around when you was tied in with that was, what was it like series 13, 15, 18?
Crumbs, I can't even remember when I started helping them out and working with them.
Not on the spotlight way, not like me.
Blimey. Well, I mean, I first started helping them out with just doing the Facebook group.
Yeah.
And trying to get more people interested in the show, and trying to keep things going in between series. Then I started helping out doing the Most Haunted Experience, the live event. And that was when I started to see cracks, because there were things going on behind the scenes that I wasn't being privy to, which I should have been, because that would have made the team that I was using with me on the night run a lot smoother, and things wouldn't have been an issue. But there turned out to be a lot of he said, she said, and I was the one getting the blame. And in the end, I just said, you know what, I'm done with it. I've seen too much now that has contradicted what I believed in, and I'm not going down this road no more. And I walked away. And walking away when I did was probably the best thing I could have ever done, because shortly after that, contrary to what a certain person says, UK TV dropped them. They didn't leave UK TV, they got dropped.
Yeah.
So of course now they're just on YouTube and Facebook.
And also as well, some of the locations they did cover was, you know, it was jaw dropping when you look back at, I know all the information's there of the list of the places they went to, and I'm still like today going, oh, I still haven't been to there, I still haven't been here, I still haven't been there. Like Croxter Falls on my doorstep, and I do remember Derek going there for one episode, and I was just like, I've got to go there because I know I can relate to what he's saying about the corridor and the servants there, and
I mean, that is one thing I will never take away from Most Haunted, was the fact that a lot of people got into the paranormal because of Most Haunted. Yeah. My interest in the paranormal was never Most Haunted related. My intrigue with the paranormal actually got boosted more by watching BBC's Ghost Watch.
Yeah.
That to me actually got me more interested in actually going to places to look for spirit, rather than Most Haunted, which didn't come along for another, was it 16 years or so? Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people will go, oh, Most Haunted got me into that, but it's not. For me, it was Ghost Watch got me into the paranormal, as well as my own experiences beforehand. But I will never be able to thank Most Haunted enough for giving me that initial start with being able to boost my abilities, and probably to boost my confidence, because beforehand I wouldn't really sort of go out of my way to talk to people unless I really, really had to. Now I could be plopped in a room full of strangers and come out with a room full of friends.
Yeah, and that's what you can't buy, isn't it? You can't buy
Yeah,
that. And that the amount of friends I've met and connections and, you know, lovely invites that we get, and we're running up and down here, there, and everywhere, and we've got that contact, and somebody will inbox you a few weeks later after you've not seen them, and stuff like that as well. It's just
yeah,
it's very proud to be a part of that.
yeah. And I've made a lot of friends because of what I did with Most Haunted. You know, I haven't got the Facebook friends, the likes of Fred Batten, Carl Beattie have got, you know, they have to make a second profile because their first profile is full of friends. But I'm sort of, I have my own little ring of friends, and then I've got my paranormal friends, which is the vast majority of my friends list on Facebook.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for those people, and if it wasn't for Most Haunted, I wouldn't have those friends. And there are quite a few of them I do regularly talk to.
And they're still there, aren't they? You know, they are still there. What would you say your favourite one of all series or program was? When do you think that was the best location that you ever seen or were involved in? I'll put you on the spot with that one, so just throw that little question at you.
It's going to be hard to place it, to be honest. A favourite episode. And to be honest, I would going to have to go with what technically would be the second episode of the first series, Athelhampton House. Although that was filmed first, it was actually the second show of the series, I think it was. And I was actually given the opportunity to go down there as part of an MHE event. Normally with MHE, the team would be consisted of people that lived 2 hours away from the location.
Yeah.
But I was asked to actually go all the way down to Athelhampton House from Colchester to help with the event. And I'm like, well, you know, it's quite a drive away.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's all right, it's all right. I said, well, you know, it's my partner's birthday the following day, so I won't be able to hang around. And they're like, it's all right, well, we can put you up in a room, and then it'll change. You can't be put up in a room. Of course, we got down there and did the investigation, and it was things like the billiard room where the monkey came up the back, the sort of like the secret staircase.
Yeah.
And the things that were going on in there was just
mental,
strange and immense. And I think it was at that point when I got my first inkling of what Carl and Stuart were really like as people. Right. And that sort of took the final straw off for me, to be honest. And I'm like, nah, you know, I've come all the way down. It took me 5.5 hours to get there, 4.5 hours to get back straight after the event. So I was absolutely shattered by the time I got home. And yet I was expected to help my partner out, get ready for her birthday party, and carry on like nothing ever happened. So it became very difficult.
Sorry, the lovely Vivian saying it is in the process of being knocked down. Is that right? Do you know of the hall?
Yeah, it's in the process of being knocked down. Well, Athelhampton House itself is still being lived in.
Right, okay. And might just be reverting back to a question somebody else has asked her, you know, from the
might be RAF Upward.
Yeah, right, okay. So
RAF Upward, when we got there, they had the fences were up, and one of the roads going through the base was still open, and we were still able to get access. And we were literally told a year after we'd been there that the developers had actually moved in.
Yeah.
And we filmed there 2 years ago. So,
what have you got up and coming then? Where do you off into your plans in the future? Where have you got investing? I have made a few little notes, but I just didn't want to make sure that they were linked with you and all that about certain museums and theatres and.
We recently did the Old Nick Theatre in Gainsborough, and I've been invited back up there in August, I think it is 14th of August, to go back and investigate up there again with the team. I think it's the 3rd of July. We're filming our latest episode of Truth Beyond Paranormal down in Watford. at our director's haunted flat, which used to be an old mill at one point. So there is quite a lot of activity around that area.
Yeah.
I'm a guest speaker at the is it the farm in Skegness or the village in Skegness?
Yeah, I've done that. I've done the where's the Skegness? I'm just trying to think. I have been out to an old museum up that neck of the woods. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
think.
I think it was something like the farm or the village in Skegness, but with East Anglian Paranormal Investigations. They invited me up there as a guest speaker for the day on the 17th of July.
I think that's got a separate cottage to it as well, if I'm right.
Yeah.
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 That'll be the one.
Again, that one is on my bucket list. So I'm sort of like really, I feel really privileged to have been invited to go to that one, because it's, you know, you get all these places and you're like, oh, I'd really love to go to this one and this one. And then out of the blue, a team turns around to you and says, you know, would you like to guest appear? You know, come and be a part of the investigation team with us and the guests. And you're like, you know, wow, thank you. I don't know, it's very humbling when you get people ask that.
And it ticks the boxes for yourself, isn't it? Because it's like,
yeah,
you do feel privileged, and it's just, you feel an honour just to be a part of, like, yeah, I'll come along, I'll make the evening, try and give you my experience and share what you're picking up on and sensing and everything else, and interaction as well. So again, it's nice to tick the boxes for people as well, and it you know, I think it's very, very rewarding as well.
Yeah, it is. And again, I've made more friends by doing these events. You know, I mean, when we did the Gainsborough Theatre, the owner of the group that invited me up there had introduced me as an author and presenter of Truth Beyond Paranormal, and I then had to get up and do something I don't normally like doing, and that was actually introduce myself and what I do in front of these people. When it's on something like this over the internet, it's one thing, but when I'm doing it face to face, my face goes bright red. I get really embarrassed. And there's me standing there, I've got my books in my hand and I'm going, well, these books are blah, blah, blah. And I do special offer on them. I'll do 2 for £6 instead of £7. And I throw in a free Spookinori bookmark. And they're all like, oh my God, oh yeah. Next minute I knew, within 5 minutes of talking to these people, I had 10 people in a queue, all with books in their hand, all going, can you sign this, please? Can you sign that, please? And my friend who was with us turned around to me and he said, now you know how Stephen King feels when he does book signing. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, do you know what? I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
And I got even more nervous with that, because I've got all these people standing there. And I'm like, who would you like me to make this book out to? And they go, oh, can you make it out to Dawn, please? So I'm like, okay, to Dawn, keep it spooky, Wayne Seaden. And then I do a little ghost underneath it and I hand it back to them. And they're like, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you're welcome. Just leave a nice review on Amazon.
I've had to, when I go locations, or I try and usually buy them a memorable cup, you know, from the town or the city or something that's linked with it. I've had to stop buying them. You know, where you go to the Titanic building in Belfast and then you go Edinburgh or whatever. The collection was just getting too big, and I just didn't have any places to add on to it.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself collecting any type of memorabilia from where you go?
I try and, I know this sounds weird. Again, this all seems to be World War II related, but if I go to somewhere, I'll find a pebble or a stone from the location and I'll pick it up.
Yeah. And
I'll put it in a tin. And there were so many documented cases where soldiers, when they were going to different operation theatres, they would take an old mess tin or something and they'd fill it with sand with a label on the top, like you see in Private Ryan.
Yeah.
And he'll mark on there Juno Beach or Normandy or Sicily or something like that. And I'd be like, I'll just pick up a pebble.
Yeah.
Or I would literally, before the owners leave the location, I would buy something from them, to sort of like help them out, because they rely on donations and what they sell to keep the place running. But also as a memento for me of sort of ticking off my bucket list.
Yeah, and also as well the with the momentum side of it, I've got a bullet there from Flounders and stuff like that I was given by a historian as well. It's not live, but I always find sometimes a day or two it can be strange in and around a certain object for a day or two. You know, when you're bringing it in, and that's why I try not to bring too much memorabilia back. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
like Williamson's tunnels, I think I asked for in Liverpool. I asked for a brick, so we used that for the gate wedge. You know what I mean? So like one of the bricks that was from. So stuff like that. That if I can leave it outside, then I'm more drawn to that. I find as well. So we are coming up to an hour and 10 minutes. It's been a fantastic catch up and all that as well. Do you want to, anyone can contact you by email?
Yeah, they can contact me by email. It's Wayne Seaden, spelled Seaden, at hotmail.co.uk.
Which I didn't want to give out. I just wanted to see if it was all right to ask you first.
Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, I'm also on Facebook as well, along with Wayne Seaden. Wayne Seaden presents Spooking Ori, which is my little group. I sometimes do live readings of some of my books and my stories. I also do like a live raffle every now and then. The book Cricket, the main family in cricket is called the Dwyer family, and that was the result of my first raffle for a character name. And I just basically asked if anybody wanted to have their name put in one of my books, just leave your name in the comments below and I will do a live raffle, and if your name gets drawn out, you'll be the main character in that book. And one of my friends, Kevin Dwyer, managed to win his name to be put in the book, and he got himself a copy of it with a bookmark and that, and he was thrilled to bits. And I think that sort of allows me to sort of be more in touch with the people that read them as well.
Do you find when you've done your first book that you just go into that mode, and once you focus, that's it? You can do a paragraph, or you can do a page or a sentence or a chapter. How do you break it up?
Well, the weird part was Whistle from the Hills was easy to write. That was very easy. I got all that written very quickly, all in one go. But once I'd finished that one and it was published and I saw the reviews coming in, I then started with Lady J. And Lady J I'd written 16 years ago originally. Only I'd written it out on an old typewriter. So I had to reread it. I had to edit it and then put it onto the laptop so that it could be put through to Amazon, ready to be published. And so that took a little bit longer. But once I got on with Cricket, again, Cricket was a book that was very easy for me to write, and I was able to start and then stop. Job Done, the new one, was written about 2 years ago. And I keep getting writer's block with that. Something keeps trying to stop me.
Also on that as well, do you have a abbreviation page at the back for our good friends over in the pond that we touched on at the start of the I think you might have to go down that road as well with the explanation of some of the English words.
Well, this was the thing. It's like with A Whistle from the Hill. When you spell the word grey in America, they spell it differently.
Yeah.
And someone did put down in one of the reviews for it on Amazon that there was a few punctuation marks and, you know, and bits of spelling was out. And I'm thinking, well, to be honest, I was using Microsoft Word, which obviously is an American-based program, and it was being put onto the Amazon KDP, which is American-based as well. So they didn't necessarily spot the difference in the spelling. So now what I've done is I've had to activate the UK English. I've had to activate the dictionary, the spell checker, and everything else. So now if I write a sentence and there's anything just slightly amiss, it gets flagged and I can then correct it straight away before I carry on any further.
But we learn as we move forwards as well.
Yeah.
are you okay for time? Because I'll talk for ages.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Anything around the Dark Mirror radio show? Can you give me a little bit more into that?
Yeah, well, I was approached by Mark Manley, good friend of mine. I've known him for about 10 years or so. I first met him when we did an investigation down at an old barn in North London. And a very strange experience there. But me and him have been really good friends since. And I'd always sort of watched the live feeds that he did. And eventually he just asked me if I'd like to join him, co-host it. And so I said, yeah, okay. So it's me and him on a Friday night, and we talk about anything sort of paranormal or conspiracy related. The Friday's one we were discussing the Illuminati, which kicked up a few laughs, to say the least, which is one thing we do. We do have a serious tone to everything, to the broadcast. But at the same time, we do have a bit of fun at the same time, which helps break it up. And then his daughter helps him with the Sunday show normally, which is called the Rearview Mirror.
Yeah.
And then they tend to do top 10 of the paranormal, and they'll pick on a certain subject and they'll talk about top 10 things to do. And that's quite a pleasure to do. You know, we only do an hour on a Friday night, and it is quite enjoyable.
Well, what I've always done as well over the years, in and around like development classes and stuff like that, I always throw people into the deep end. So if you've got somebody that's quite advanced to like a new beginner, we're trying to bring the confidence forwards as well. Is like, I feel it balances out then. So even the experienced people, it drops them, but it raises the person that's on the learning curve as well. Is there anything that have you got a goal, a target that you'd like to set yourself?
Well, there was the dream, obviously, with my Spookanori's was to hopefully get one turned into a film. But the company that's coming in to do to put Truth Beyond Paranormal onto Amazon, they're called Fusology Productions Limited. They come in to originally just help get Truth Beyond Paranormal onto Amazon and try to help us develop the series a lot better. And then in the same breath, they turned around to me and said, "Oh, we'd like to take on Spookanori as well." And I'm like, really?
But you certainly got the voice for it, haven't you? You've got that grasping voice that brings people in as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the things that sort of appealed to a lot of people on the Most Haunted group on Facebook, was that when I did the live readings originally, if I didn't do them live, I did them pre-recorded, and I would sit in my shed in my old house's back garden, and it would be totally black, and I would have my Most Haunted hooded top on, and I would just have a torch shining on my face, and I would read the story as like that. But then obviously when I walked away from Most Haunted and started developing Spookanori's to publish and things like that, I thought, well, you know, I can read some of the older ones on the Facebook group.
Yeah.
So I carried on, and I thought, you know, Carl Beattie had always said, you know, I've got the voice for it.
I'm not going to say the voice for radio, Wayne. I don't mean it that way. But
you've got the. For me, it would be the 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the morning show. I think would be designed to put people to sleep.
I actually done a local radio station in the I think it was Seacombe on the Wirral. I think it was 7 Waves Radio at the time, and I done a Halloween special there one night, and it was quite on that, like, of the grounds of what we was picking up on the night. You know, there's no security there. It was just empty, just me and the presenter. Yeah. And just so much stuff just seemed to come forward from the land and the time. And it was like, you could see the presenter, who's a very good friend of mine still. And, you know, we've always remained friends. And you could see him on the night. It was just like going, oh, this is too much, this. You could see him actually shrinking in, going, oh, is it Halloween over yet? You know, but, it actually tied in that the spirit energy that was coming through from that radio station was a earlier security guard of the land, you know, on the from the building when it was being set up. And, you know, he'd passed through circumstances and illness, but again, he just basically popped in to say hello. But the old 2 or 3 hours on the radio seemed to be getting to the bottom of that story as well.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Last one is, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it because I've not seen the word before. It's one at Saint something Priories. Have you? Not too sure how to spell that, how to pronounce that. Is there any local priories down by you, or have you been to any priories local to you?
Someone's asked you a question I've only just recently posted on Facebook about. We have got a priory in Colchester.
Right.
It's I think it was part of the dissolution of monasteries and was destroyed, and it is literally now just a ruins. Whenever me and my partner and the children go into town, we always go to a car park that actually the footpath goes right through the middle of it. And you know, every time I go through there, I always take a picture of the priory and what's left of it, because it's a fascinating place just to walk through. You know, I think there's about 5 or 6 floors to this building, or what's left of it.
Yeah.
And they've still got all the tombstones around there. And I look at it and I think to myself, you've got all these people are sitting on these tombstones drinking their bottles of White Lightning, and I think, how disrespectful can you get? You know, whether there's anybody's in there or not, that still to me is disrespectful.
Yeah, it's like a validation of the time and the land and the period and the.
Yeah,
you know, I've been to a few locations where you pull up in a car park and, you know, you go into not an abandoned place you're not allowed to be, but like a National Trust place, and the kids are all there, and as you walk in, you get that, you know, the Scooby-Doo comments and stuff like that, and I'm like, it's all right, I'm just cracking on, just don't do anything. Don't do anything.
I do that. If people turn around to me and they go, "Oh yeah, you're crazy. You know, you go out in the middle of the night looking for ghosts that aren't really there or whatever," and I go, "Well, you know, you get on with what you do, and I'll get on with what I do. I enjoy what I do, even if nothing happens. You know, I'm quite happy to stand in a location for 6 or 7 hours and not get anything.
Yeah.
Because then at least I've got the privilege of turning around and saying, I've been there.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get nothing, but who's to say that tomorrow, if I go back, something does happen?"
And that again, to me, that again comes down with the logging of your notepad and obviously any filming and that you can recall and recap as well. So
yeah,
thank you for being part of an amazing, I'd say, hour and 25 minutes. It's flown by as per usual.
It's always the way.
Yeah, Carl Morgan and I think David West touched on it before. They've been investigated the Red Line as well.
Yep.
In and around where you are.
The Red Line itself is amazing, and last October, was it last October, when we were in the tier system, we were actually able to go into the Red Line on the tier system. There was only 3 of us on that investigation, and it is very difficult to investigate the Red Line because it's right on the high street, and when most events teams do their investigations, it's a Friday or Saturday night. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, you've got all the nightclubs kicking out. So while you're sitting in the room, nice and quiet, asking for spirit to come forward and communicate with you, you've got 6 yobbos outside beating the living daylights out of each other over a silly little girl that wanted another bloke to buy a drink for. And it ruins the investigation. But for this time for us, and as far as we're aware, we're the only people that have actually been able to go in there and film an episode right the way through from about 8 o'clock at night till 3:30 in the morning without being disturbed once.
That you can't ask any more for that, can you? Locations.
10:30 at night, the police, you know, all the bars and clubs, they kicked everybody out, and by 11:15, the police went down in one big line right down Colchester High Street, and they moved everybody off. There was no problems whatsoever. and it was made for an amazing investigation. And on our Truth Beyond Paranormal page, we keep our live feeds that we do, because we do live feeds at the same time as record for the episode.
Yeah.
And we were down in the basement and we were filming, total darkness, and yet these two oddly shaped eyes appeared on camera. I zoomed in on them and they kept flickering and changing colour. Then a shadow walked past the front of us, in between me and this object. And we must have filmed it for about 45 minutes. And when we finished, we turned the light on, and all there was the brown cardboard boxes and bin bags. There was no source of light there whatsoever. Yet on the video, you clearly see these two eyes. And we're
and sometimes as well, trying to explain to people when there's like shift shapers around or energies that's following and leading to other things going on as well within the investigation. It's like, you know, it's there, you can sense it there, you can see it there. And when you turn the lights up or you open the environment to how it is, it's like, I haven't got an explanation for that right at this moment. Yeah.
You know, you see something in the dark, and obviously I've always said it to people that your brain has to fill in the blanks of what your eyes can't see. Your eyes will always pin out, you know, they will always mark out certain points of light that may be seen through, i.e. through the bottom of a doorway or the top of a door. But it's what your eyes cannot see out of that picture that your brain tries to fill in the blanks. So we're like, well, okay, we saw those two lights. We now know they were on a box. So why was my brain putting those two lights on that box if it was my brain?
Yeah.
And we couldn't find an answer for it. So
if you've got the validation of somebody else experiencing that and seeing that, and I always find sometimes, which I find hard to do, is not say it automatically, which you always do.
Yeah.
You get drawn to the energy, or you get drawn to what's going on in the corner, or a certain specific part of the room or the street or castle or anything. And sometimes I need to say a little bit less. So I've got a little bit of testing to do there for myself. And I think I'm going to be taking my notepad a little bit more and making a time and a bullet point, and then see if anyone picks up on that within 5 or 10 minutes, and then just recap on that type of thing as well. Do you know when you've done your filming and anything like that, Wayne, do you actually recap the night and go, I've just experienced, what did I experience? And it seems to batter your head for 5 or 6 days between the team as well.
We did, because we actually had that happen. We filmed an episode at Dunwich. We filmed there twice now, because the first time we were there, so much happened, and we were so in awe by what happened that we decided we had to go back. And we went to St James's Church, which is in the actual town, village centre of Dunwich, and they'd got an old leper chapel, what was left of the leper colony there. It was just a chapel section, and we'd been sitting in there, and we'd got the name Charlotte come through, and we sort of carried on with the investigation, and then it went flat. So we said, right, we'll move from here and we'll head towards the Priory. So we left the church grounds and we started walking along the main road, and by this time it was about midnight. There's no street lights. Dunwich doesn't have any street lights whatsoever, so the only light you get is what comes from the houses. And as we're walking along the road, we kept hearing these footsteps come running up behind us, and we went, whoa, what the hell's that? We turned around with our torches. There's nothing there whatsoever. So we've called our 2 other team members, Michael and Marcus, back and said to him, you know, we've just had some footprints come right up behind us and there's no one here. And as we said that, a moorhen or something started making a load of noise, and it was like it was mocking us, and it followed us all the way back to the car park at Dunwich. Every time we said something, it was chattering away and laughing at us. Marcus turns around and says, shut up or I'll have you for breakfast. And that was it. We didn't hear nothing else. And then we never heard the footsteps or anything again. And we thought, you know, and for days after that, we were like, no, it's got to have been Charlotte come running up to us, because she'd attached herself to my partner.
Right.
She felt compelled to go to Ellen. So we think that she wanted to stay with Ellen. So when we moved away from the church, she felt she was being left behind. So she ran up behind us to keep up with us. But we turned around, couldn't see nothing there. And we got on the footage. I can't remember whether we actually got the sound of the footsteps, but we did get footprints on the road.
Right.
And we're like, okay, there's no water puddles. Where did these footprints come from?
Right. One more question from Vivian. Did you ever investigate the cage?
Oh, Vanessa Mitchell was a lovely lady when she owned that place. Very nice. She even gave me a signed copy of her book that she did. But I had the privilege of investigating there with Richard Case, the Ghost Challenger, many moons ago. Much to my hand's disapproval, because obviously he was the Ghost Challenger and he does the investigations on his own.
Yeah.
He was having a problem with his mobile phone, and I was there to provide support for him in case anything happened, and to obviously get his equipment in and out of the place. And his phone was not getting any reception, yet mine was getting full reception. So I said, well, the only way you're going to do this is by using my phone for your hotspot.
Yeah.
If I go into the house, I lose reception. So if I stand outside and you bounce off my hotspot, you'll be able to do the live feed. So he's like, brilliant. So he's walking around inside the house. I'm walking around outside, freezing cold, bitter wind, raining. And there's me standing there on the side of the house with my phone up like this. And in the end, I said to him, Richard, I'm going to have to come indoors. I'm getting too cold out here.
It is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah. I ended up sitting the only place I could actually stay in the cage where I was able to get reception on my phone was sitting on top of Vanessa's fridge.
Right.
But
I was,
yeah, I was, as a child, I'd heard so much about the cage, being it Britain's most haunted house, and all these people had got so many apparitions or so many things had happened there. And even when Vanessa was showing us around the place, she told us about the black shadow that she experienced at the top of the stairs when she was doing the ironing. And we got in there, it must have been about 8 o'clock at night, and we were there till about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And we hardly got anything. I didn't even feel anything. We only had one incident where I put a cross of glow sticks on a table upstairs in one of the bedrooms. And we came downstairs, we had a cup of coffee, and then when I went back upstairs again, one of the glow sticks had come off the table. It literally just rolled off.
Yeah.
And Vanessa had got CCTV cameras in there, but they don't record. They're for people, if they want to be downstairs in the kitchen making the cup of teas and that, they can actually watch on the cameras to see if anything goes on at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I was quite sort of perplexed as to figure out what was actually causing that to move, because it was a cross. It was two like that, and then two going sideways. So if one of these glow sticks was to come off, the other one should have as well. But it hadn't. It was just a one glow stick.
Right.
So whatever it was, it obviously just moved that one glow stick rather than tip the table.
Push the energy in between.
Yeah. So I don't believe the cage is as haunted as people have been told that it is. Like very similar to East Drive. Yeah. I don't think that is as haunted as people have made out.
Yeah, I've done East Drive maybe 10, 12, 13 times and that, and I think we done a 48-hour invest. That was quite weighted towards the end. 2 different nights, 2 totally different 24 hours. Definitely. But I felt that was it, trying to grind you down. I'll grind you down as well. Our Phil has said, the cameraman, he's just said, gonna add you on Facebook to listen to him more. Come on, you blues. So, Phil, you are honoured that I've actually said that, but there's no hatred there. It's just local banter. As he knows, I'm a massive red. Everyone's just saying thank you for a great interview and thank you for being an amazing guest. It has been a pleasure. Where's calling you or a bucket list? Where's really calling you that you like? I think I've always been drawn to the Ragged School, but I've not got there yet in London.
I've been there once and I wouldn't really want to go back.
Okay.
The building is quite large. It's an amazing place if you like the history. But we only actually, the time that we were in now, must have had about 2 things happen. We had one of those bouncy balls with the flashy light in. We threw that up to one corner of the basement and it came back and it was flashing. And then someone had set up a Connect camera and got a stick figure sitting in a chair.
Right.
And that was it.
Right.
You know, and the problem is the Connect camera is very susceptible to pareidolia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely as well. And but then again, it's nice to see that people have come up with equipment, used it, tried it for like, I would say, at the period there, like 18 months when everyone was onto it and everyone was using it.
Yeah.
You don't really see a lot of people using that now, do you, with the SLS? But I think with different experiments, you can try different things in a room using that and setting it up and having other things going off as well. I think that comes in handy.
I prefer the more traditional methods. I prefer setting up trigger objects with a piece of paper and a cross or a coin on it and draw around it, and then just leaving it in an area and then trusting everybody else not to go near it and touch it.
Yeah.
You know, I would rather go with those methods or things like dowsing rods than rely on gadgets and technology. At Gainsborough, the old Nick, a couple of weeks ago, there was 4 people were using Ghost Tube.
Yeah.
The app on the mobile phones.
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to humour them and I'm going to have a go at this and see what happens. And I downloaded it, I started it up, and I pointed at a fire extinguisher, and straight away up came the stick man. And why did the stick man appear? Because the shoulders of the fire extinguisher are very similar to the shoulders of a human being. So it automatically put a stick man where this fire extinguisher was. And I went, do you know what? I'm uninstalling that.
with that as well on the Ghost Tube, I always have it where I have the camera the other way, so I don't have it facing objects. I have it just facing in the room.
Facing you.
I don't use that side of it. But I went to Walton Hall in Liverpool, and when it was picking up on like a female behind the bar, and I think I said something like a green dress or something, and instantly it was just coming out with like, yes, correct, or yes, then correct. And then it was like, it was tying in certain ways with the word bank side of it. So again, it's that there's no manipulation there, but it's just nice to see a random refreshing thing that's just give it a run, give it a trial, give it a test. I'm not a real person, but I feel that when you're doing an investigation as a medium, people want to see what you're receiving, but that object or that equipment is doing something different. Realistically, like if we go in blind, after going in blind, I'd say with no equipment and then just writing everything down and then going that. But people don't want to read that, do they? No,
and I mean, we've used one app which we do use on a regular occasion. And it's like the obvious, the pre-programmed words, and it just comes up at random and things like that. And we've had sentences, but last year we went over to Mersey Island, just outside Colchester. And obviously that was an old Roman settlement, world famous for its oysters. And I'd always known about the story of the Roman centurion going up to this burial mound where the so-called princess of Mersey Island was buried.
Yeah.
And so we decided, truth beyond paranormal, we were up at mine for my birthday, and we thought, right, let's go out and do a little investigation. So we went to Mersey Island. Now, the only way you can get onto the island when the tide is down is through a causeway. So when the tide comes up, you get cut off.
Yeah.
So we've gone over there. we're stopped in a lay-by, which is the road that leads up to this burial mound. And we all walked out onto the causeway, and we're all standing there taking photos. And the view we get is of the Blackwater, which then leads onto the Thames and into London. And I'm taking a few pictures on my phone, and I said to everybody, I said, look, I said, my phone, the picture's coming up with a purple sky. And the other team members were using this app on their phone, and all of a sudden, within the space of 30 seconds, everybody's app all said sky.
Wow.
It was almost like it had heard what I'd said.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is really weird. I've mentioned sky, and then all these apps individually have said sky.
Yeah.
And then we decided, right, we'll move on and we'll head up towards the burial mound. And as we turn, we see this car coming down the hill towards us. And it had the old round headlights like the old Volkswagen Beetles had.
Yeah.
And came down the hill towards us. Excuse me. And my partner decided, oh, she goes, I need the toilet. And I said, well, you know, go in front of the car. And then as this car had come down, see it pull up in front. So I'm shouting, don't go to the toilet. Don't go to the toilet. There's a car just pulled in. So we're all standing there screaming, don't go. Don't stop there. Stay. Don't move. Next minute we know, I get to the car, our car, where this car had pulled up in front of. And the car had pulled in, switched its lights off, and promptly disappeared. It didn't drive past us. It didn't turn around and go back up the hill. And yet everybody saw the headlights, and they pulled into the lay-by in front of my car and just vanished.
Do you feel that's like a time loop of the date that you was there, roughly?
Yeah, I think it was a playback, because there were obviously, without actually being sort of closer to it when it pulled into the lay-by,
yeah,
to actually see it disappear, that would confirm that it was like the stone tape theory, or just just a playback.
Yeah.
Because obviously it would have been nice if that had pulled up in front of us and we were actually able to still see that car and actually get real close to it to actually confirm whether that's real or not.
Whether you're looking for what type of model it is, or what era, or what,
and I mean, we could only see these headlights, and they could only look like, to me, like the old round Volkswagen Beetle headlights. But there has been a lot of accidents on that stretch of road, especially during the winter months, where people have driven on black ice and they've ended up ditching their cars into the water and drowning themselves. So it could be a video playback of this guy having an accident, and we just haven't recognised it.
Vivian saying there as well, excuse me for bombarding you with questions, it's just that
that's okay.
Have you used any crystals when you've been doing an investigation? Have you set any crystals up on using an to do an investigation with?
Yes, I have some turquoise and tiger's eye on chains that we use, but I don't like to have human interference.
Yeah,
I'm a skeptic believer. I class them. Yeah. I believe, but I go with a scientific approach. So I'm a scientific believer. Sorry, not a skeptic believer. I will look at the credible answers first, and with pendulums and crystal work, I would rather have something. If someone suggests to us we do some crystal work, I'll go, okay, fine, and I'll make a frame up. Yeah. And I will hang the crystal from the frame, because I don't want to be to mislead the investigation, because I've got a shaky hand.
Yeah.
You know, you've only got to just adjust your weight just that little bit, and that crystal will start moving. But knowing full well that spirit can use that crystal, I would rather alleviate the risk of my interference. So I would use a frame and hang it from the frame. And we've done that live on Truth Beyond Paranormal, where I've got, because we couldn't investigate because of lockdown, we all did a live link to all the team members' houses, and the main house that we were using was Sam, our director's house. And so I got her to set up a rig with her microphone stand, and actually got her to hang the crystal from the stand, and it started moving. Yet nothing was touching the stand. And I'm like, they're the answers we're after. You know, that's what we want.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just go slightly and then watch that crystal move. But I would rather get rid of that and have something more solid.
Right, young man, as again, it's been a pleasure. And just again, thank you for your time. I could sit and talk to you all night, but I know it's getting on, and I'm just going to thank all the viewers for their comments and all that. And again, please, add Wayne, get in touch with him, ask comments. A very, very knowledgeable young man there as well, out there in the field. And please get his books and have a read, and it'd be great to catch up with you soon as well in the future. Stay in the studio. I'll just end the broadcast and thank everyone for tuning in tonight as well. And I do have another guest on Thursday night on the open mic hour, and I will post that up for you later on, folks, 9 o'clock on Thursday. So I will see you then. Stay in the studio for me, Wayne. I'm going to say good night to my folks, and top, nearly 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes. Thank you very much. Stay with me, my friend.
Okay.
Good night, folks.
Bye.